Welcome to another video blog of Journey to the Last Frontier. Uh, as followers of this blog and YouTube channel know, I did a 3-week do-it-yourself solo vacation expedition in Alaska, and I'm here today to tell you how to enjoy the great state of Alaska and plan your own trip. So let's do it. During my Alaska expedition, I spent 3 weeks. I drove more than 3,000 miles around the state, and I traversed close to 300 miles of waterways, ocean, rivers, lakes. It was an amazing trip of a lifetime. Took a year of planning, and I'm going to tell you how to plan your own do-it-yourself solo Alaska expedition. Okay, you don't have to follow my itinerary, but some of the steps that I took will help you plan what makes sense for you and your family, or for yourself if you're going to do a solo expedition like I did. So, first off, do-it-yourself vacation in Alaska is not booking a cruise. No cruise. It is not booking a luxury lodge, no matter how remote and amazing the wildlife and fishery and scenery are. It is about booking your own trip on your terms and doing it the way you want to enjoy Alaska, not anybody else. Okay, so ways of enjoying Alaska on a do-it-yourself expedition: you could RV, you could camp, you can certainly bike or motorcycle, as well as renting a truck and driving it into the dirt, which is pretty much what I did with a 4x4 rental and 3,000 plus miles. Okay, so here's how I planned this expedition. I'm going to walk through some of the major steps that I took, and you could follow along, adjust it as you see fit and what makes sense for you and your family, or like I said, you if you're going to do it solo. First off, some obstacles to consider. Alaska is freaking huge, okay? It is larger than the continental Europe. It is ginormous, okay? There is a lack of roads to a lot of places. You just cannot drive, and there are a lack of good roads, and a lot of the roads require a 4x4, okay, 4-wheel drive. Most car rental places will not rent you a vehicle that you can take on the off-road roads, okay, whether that be the Dalton Highway or some of the other more scenic roads. You are not allowed. There are a handful of car rental or truck rental companies in Alaska that allow you to take your vehicle on any road, including the Dalton Highway, and I'll leave those names in the description below. So there's a lack of roads, a lack of good roads. Okay, in a lot of places you need a 4x4. Equally important, because the distances are huge, there's also large distances between gas stations. You got to keep an eye on your gas mileage, and I had to turn back before making it to Prudhoe Bay because I didn't have enough gas to get there and back to where I was staying in a cabin in Weissman. So I had to cut that journey short. I never initially planned on getting up to Prudhoe Bay, but once I was kind of driving, I'm like, let me see, maybe I could do it. Did some calculations based on the amount of gas I had, how far it was to Prudhoe, and getting back to Weissman. And I decided to turn around and just head back to Weissman, where I already had my cabin and I was already staying for 3 amazing days. So gas is critical, okay? And also, there's a lot of places in Alaska you can only fly into. My trip was almost exclusively available to me by roads, off-road. I did a few flights, but those were more for fishing as opposed, or flight seeing, as opposed to flying in and landing in a destination and staying there, which is a completely other DIY trip, but I'm focusing here on how I did mine. And obviously you could fly around from town to town in Alaska and make an amazing trip that way. Gear. So gear is critically important Things in Alaska are very expensive, and some things you just can't get. Okay, um, you have to go on the assumption that if you don't bring it in, you're not going to have it. Okay, so that's clear. And if you are taking a motorcycle or an RV, your own vehicle, extra gas cans are critical. I saw plenty of people in RVs with extra gas cans. I've seen motorcyclists that had extra gas with them, and did see a few bicyclists that had the entire road kit with them so they could do their repairs as needed. And the roads are really bad, so you will get flat tires if you're biking. So if you don't bring it with you, like I said, you may not be able to get it. So you have to cover your basics of what you're bringing in. First aid kit, your gear, whether it's fishing, biking, hiking, camping, bring the basic stuff with you. Okay. Guns, check. Alaska is very easy to bring weapons into. Just go through the proper protocols of your state and federal aviation, or if you're driving, making sure you're crossing state lines. That's your responsibility. I didn't bring a gun with me. I did bring a couple of hunting knives. I always had one on my belt at all times. And bear spray is also very important. It is illegal to fly with bear spray, whether as checked or carry on, but I did buy a couple cans of bear spray in Alaska at an outfitter in Anchorage, and I had that with me whenever I went out in the backcountry on my own, and certainly had it in the car wherever I was going. So bear spray is also very important. The route and itinerary. It's really important to map out Alaska before you go. It is a huge state. The 3 weeks, the 3,000 miles I drove, it's impossible to see it all. Don't try. I spent a year backpacking across Europe in the 1980s, and I can tell you in a year, you can't see all of Europe. You're certainly not going to see all of Alaska in 3 to 4 weeks. So don't even try. Focus on what's important to you. Okay, for me, it was really fishing, particularly for rainbow trout and halibut, as well as going north of the Arctic Circle and exploring the Arctic region. So I built my trip around what my priorities are. Your priorities certainly are very different, and we'll talk about how I mapped out and created stages for my trip that was really helped focus on the areas that I wanted to focus on and save time and money. So whatever your objective is, hiking, camping, canoeing, rafting, biking, fishing, shooting, whatever, understand that the terrain in Alaska is like anything you'll ever encounter, and it's always going to be there. It's tempting, but it is also very dangerous if you're not prepared. Go over all of your logistics and travel times if you're going to be biking or hiking or what have you. Know the distances ahead of time. Know how long it's going to take to get there. Where you could resupply, whether it's gas, food, etc. Map it all out. It will save time and possibly your life. Okay, I brought several maps with me. A good road map, a topo map, maps of the national parks I was going in and around. Also, I brought a map of the Kenai Peninsula and a map of the Arctic. So and these are paper maps because a lot of the places you're going to go, you will not have cell coverage. Okay, I'll talk more about that in a moment. So you go over all of those logistics. And if you're camping, you know what you have to do on camping or RVing. If you're going to be staying at rustic log cabins or rustic cabins like I did, you have to make a critical choice. Indoor plumbing or not. I preferred indoor plumbing, although I didn't get it all the time, which is a whole other funny story. Also, look at, if you're going in these cabins, what type of kitchen amenities that you have. Refrigerator, no refrigerator, what type of cooking utensils. Call ahead, email them. They'll always be glad to let you know. In the Arctic, there are no grocery stores. I had to bring all my provisions in from Fairbanks. Fairbanks is the closest place to buy groceries if you're going north of the Arctic Circle. So what you bring in is what you eat. Otherwise, you don't. So you, again, planning, logistics, pre-knowledge is critically important. So lack of cell coverage in Alaska is really key to planning. Once you get outside of the main cities and you're in the countryside or the back country, assume you will have no cell coverage. I had no cell coverage for the majority of the time I was traveling in Alaska. However, I did have a Garmin InReach Plus that had a satellite communication device that allowed me to send messages to my contacts, as well as GPS coordinates, and it has an SOS button. I have video links of how to use that in other videos, so you could see that. I also had a device called a Zoleo, which is a satellite communication device that attaches to your phone via Bluetooth, and you can just free text, not free, but you can easily text whomever your critical contacts are when you're out and about in the out country. When I was in the Arctic, that was 7 days no cell coverage. So the only way I was able to communicate with my friends, my emergency contacts, and my wife was through my Garmin and my Zoleo. Every day I had a set time when I would communicate where I was and send GPS coordinates. So my wife, my emergency contacts, and a friend of mine always knew where I was when I was off the grid, which again was most of this trip was off the grid. So have an off the grid communications plan and test it before you go. I tested my off the grid communications in the Florida Everglades. There's no cell coverage there. Everything worked like a charm. All my contacts, my emergency contacts, and my wife all had communication and were able to confirm they received my test messages. So what did I do? What was the itinerary I did that made sense for me? I broke this trip into 3 stages. Stage 1 was the Kenai Peninsula. I drove down to the Kenai from Anchorage. So I broke this trip into 3 phases. The first phase was in the Kenai Peninsula, which is down here. I came down from Anchorage and I stayed in Homer as well as in Cooper Landing. Then you can see here, I went up this highway here, Talkeetna. I explored around the Denali area, went up to Fairbanks, drove up there, and then you can see how far north I went. Now this was pre-planned. This is before I left for Alaska. I already knew the route I was taking, where I was going. Obviously I had quite a bit of flexibility where I could enjoy and do things on the fly that I wanted to do in Alaska. But the core of a do-it-yourself trip is you really need to map it out. And I had a lot of fun mapping out, researching where I was going. I really enjoyed doing all that research. And like I said earlier in the video, I spent close to a year planning out this do-it-yourself solo adventure in Alaska. Obviously, I wish I had more time. There's more things I wanted to see. The next time I go back to Alaska, it'll be a different time of the year, not in June. I will see some old friends again and do some other things that I wanted to do and explore. The Aleutian Islands, other parts of the Arctic, other parts of the state that you need to fly into and not just drive, which is what I did. That's all. That will be a future trip in a couple of years, but this was how I planned this trip. I hope this video will help you plan a successful do-it-yourself or solo expedition to Alaska. It's an amazing bucket list trip, and the best way to do it is on your own, not with a group, not with a cruise, not with a super luxury high-end lodge where everything is taken care of. Good luck.